He spent $10 to hire a homeless woman to pretend to be his girlfriend, but what she did to his family left everyone shocked. Marcus Thompson never thought $10 would change his entire life, forever. Standing outside the upscale restaurant in downtown Chicago, watching couples walk past him with their perfect smiles and designer clothes, he felt the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. His older brother's engagement party was about to start, and once again, he was the only single Thompson brother showing up alone. The pressure from his family had been building for months. Every family gathering, every holiday dinner, the same questions kept coming. "When are you going to find someone nice, Marcus?" his mother would ask with that concerned look that made him feel like a complete failure at 28 years old. His successful older brother David had everything figured out. The perfect fiancé, the corner office at their father's law firm, the respect of everyone who mattered in their social circle. Marcus worked as a junior accountant at a small firm, lived in a modest apartment, and somehow always felt invisible next to his brother's achievements. Tonight was supposed to be different. He had planned to bring Jessica, the girl from his office he had been texting for weeks. But 3 hours before the party, she canceled with some excuse about a sudden family emergency. The text message felt like the final confirmation of what he already knew. He wasn't interesting enough, successful enough, or confident enough for someone like her. That's when he saw her sitting on the bench outside the restaurant, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps. God bless." The woman looked to be in her early 20s with tangled brown hair and clothes that had seen better days. But something about her face caught his attention. Even through the dirt and exhaustion, there was something almost elegant about her features, like she didn't quite belong in her current situation. An absolutely crazy idea started forming in his mind. What if he just needed someone to sit through one dinner? Someone who could smile, make small talk, and help him avoid the pitying looks and awkward questions from his family. Before he could talk himself out of it, Marcus approached her with his heart pounding and $10 in his hand, having no idea that this desperate decision would reveal a truth that would shake his family's world to its core. "Excuse me, miss?" Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly as he approached the young woman on the bench. She looked up with startling green eyes that seemed far too intelligent and alert for someone in her situation. "This might sound completely insane, but I have a proposition for you." The woman studied him carefully, and Marcus noticed she didn't immediately ask for money or seem desperate like he had expected. Instead, she tilted her head with what almost looked like amusement. "I'm listening," she said, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't quite place, something refined that definitely didn't match her appearance. Marcus glanced around nervously, making sure no one from his family could see him. "I need someone to pretend to be my girlfriend for about 3 hours tonight, just for dinner. My brother's engagement party is upstairs and He trailed off, realizing how pathetic he sounded. "Look, I know this is weird, but I'll give you $10 if you can just sit through dinner and act like we're together." $10, she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That's quite generous for 3 hours of acting. What exactly would this performance entail?" The way she spoke was throwing Marcus off completely. This wasn't the response he had expected from someone asking for spare change on the street. Marcus fumbled with his wallet, pulling out the cash. "Just be nice, laugh at my jokes, maybe hold my hand once or twice. Nothing inappropriate, I swear. My family just needs to see that I'm not a complete social disaster." He paused, studying her face more closely. "You have really beautiful eyes. With the right clothes and maybe a quick cleanup in the restaurant bathroom, you could totally pull this off." The woman was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus started to think she was going to tell him to get lost. But then she smiled, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. "All right, Marcus Thompson," she said, and his blood ran cold. He had never told her his name. "I'll help you with your little family problem, but I think you're going to get much more than you bargained for tonight." "Wait, how do you know my name?" Marcus asked, taking a step back from the bench. The woman's smile widened, but she didn't answer his question. Instead, she stood up gracefully, and Marcus was surprised by how tall and poised she looked despite her disheveled appearance. "The bathroom you mentioned, is it upstairs?" she asked, completely ignoring his question about his name. "I'll need to freshen up before meeting your family. First impressions matter, don't you think?" She gathered a small backpack that had been hidden beside the bench, and Marcus caught a glimpse of what looked like expensive fabric peeking out from inside. Marcus's mind was racing. Something was seriously wrong with this situation, but he was already committed, and the alternative was walking into that engagement party alone to face his family's disappointed faces. Yeah, there's a ladies' room right by the entrance, but seriously, how did you know who I am? Lucky guess, she said with a shrug that seemed anything but casual. Marcus is a popular name and you look like a Thompson. There's something about the jawline. She was walking toward the restaurant entrance now, and Marcus found himself following her, completely bewildered by how she had somehow taken control of the entire situation. As they approached the glass doors, Marcus caught their reflection and realized how insane this looked. Him in his best suit walking next to a woman who looked like she had been sleeping rough for weeks, but there was something about the way she carried herself that made him think this might actually work. She moved like someone who was used to walking into upscale places, like the expensive restaurant was exactly where she belonged. One more thing, Marcus, she said, stopping just before they reached the entrance. When we get upstairs and your family asks about me, just let me do the talking. And whatever happens tonight, don't ask me any questions you're not prepared to hear the answers to. The warning in her voice sent a chill down his spine, but before he could respond, she was already pushing through the doors, leaving him no choice but to follow her into whatever he had just gotten himself into. The transformation was absolutely incredible. 20 minutes later, Marcus was staring at a completely different person. The woman who emerged from the bathroom looked like she could have stepped off the cover of a magazine. Her hair, now clean and styled in an elegant updo, revealed a face with features so striking that several other restaurant patrons turned to look at her. She was wearing a simple black dress that somehow looked like it cost more than Marcus made in a month, paired with heels that made her walk with the confidence of someone who owned the world. But it was her entire demeanor that had changed most dramatically. Gone was any trace of the vulnerable woman from the bench. This version moved through the restaurant like royalty, nodding politely at the staff who seemed to recognize her and treat her with unusual respect. "Ready for this performance?" she asked, sliding her arm through his with practiced ease. Marcus felt like he was dreaming as they approached the private dining room where his family was waiting. Through the glass doors, he could see his brother David holding court at the head of a long table, his fiancée Amanda laughing at something their father was saying. Marcus's mother spotted them first, and her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked almost like recognition. "Marcus, dear, you didn't tell us you were bringing someone special tonight," she said, but her voice sounded strange, almost cautious. "But before de revelar what really happened, deixa o like se você está curtindo a história, and tell me in the comments, have you ever been in a situation where you had to pretend to be someone you're not? I'm curious about your experiences. Mom, Dad, everyone, I'd like you to meet..." Marcus started, then realized he still didn't know her name, but she smoothly stepped forward with a smile that could have melted ice, extending her hand to his mother with perfect poise. "Catherine Mitchell," she said, and Marcus watched his father's wine glass slip from his hands and shatter on the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's father, Robert Thompson, was staring at Catherine like he had seen a ghost, while his mother's face had gone completely white. David and Amanda exchanged confused glances, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding where it was coming from. "Catherine Mitchell?" Robert repeated slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. That's not possible. Catherine Mitchell disappeared 15 years ago after the..." He couldn't seem to finish the sentence, and Marcus noticed his hands were actually shaking. Catherine's smile never wavered, but Marcus caught something dangerous flickering in her green eyes. "After the what, Robert? After your law firm destroyed my family's company with fraudulent contracts? After you and your partners made sure my father's construction business went bankrupt while you represented the people who were stealing from him?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Marcus felt like he was watching a movie where he didn't understand the plot, but he could tell the climax was about to be devastating. His mother reached for her husband's arm, whispering urgently, "Robert, we should leave. Now." "Sit down, Margaret," Catherine said quietly, but her voice carried an authority that made everyone freeze. "After all these years of wondering what happened to the Mitchell family, don't you want to know how the story ends?" She turned to Marcus with a look that was almost pitying. "Your boyfriend here hired me for $10 to pretend to be his girlfriend. Isn't that ironic?" Marcus's world was spinning. "Wait, what's going on here? How do you know my parents? What happened 15 years ago?" But even as he asked the questions, pieces were starting to fall into place. The way she had known his name, her confidence in expensive restaurants, the way his parents were looking at her like she was their worst nightmare come to life. David finally found his voice. Dad, what is she talking about? What happened to her family's company? But Robert Thompson looked like a man who was watching his entire life crumble before his eyes, and Marcus realized that $10 had just bought him a front-row seat to his family's darkest secret being exposed. The Mitchell Construction Company was one of the most successful family businesses in Chicago. Catherine continued, her voice steady, but filled with years of buried pain. Until your father and his law firm helped a group of investors steal everything we had built over 3 generations. She walked slowly around the table, and Marcus noticed that every step she took seemed calculated, like a predator circling its prey. My father trusted Robert Thompson. They had done business together for years. When the investors came with their offer to modernize our operations, your father assured us the contracts were legitimate. Robert finally found his voice, though it came out as a croak. Catherine, please, there were complications. Things got out of hand. We tried to help your family afterward, but your father was too proud to accept. Help? Catherine's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. You call what you did help? My father lost everything. His business, our family home, his reputation. The stress gave him a heart attack 6 months later. My mother had to work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table, and She paused, her composure cracking slightly. I had to drop out of college and disappear because your complications left us with nothing. Marcus felt sick. The woman he had hired to pretend to be his girlfriend was apparently the victim of his family's corruption, and he had unknowingly brought her right into their lives. Catherine, I had no idea about any of this. I was just a kid 15 years ago. Before I continue with what happened next, tell me in the comments, what would you do if you discovered your family had destroyed someone else's life? Would you try to make it right or protect your family? Amanda, David's fiancée, was looking around the table with growing horror. David, did you know about this? Did your family really destroy her family's business? The engagement ring on her finger suddenly seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds as she realized she was about to marry into a family built on other people's suffering. I didn't know, David said quietly, but his voice lacked conviction. Dad, tell me this isn't true. Tell me we didn't build our success on destroying other families. But Robert Thompson's silence was answer enough, and Marcus watched his older brother's face crumble as the reality of their family's foundation hit him. Catherine reached into her small purse and pulled out a folder that looked like it had been waiting for this moment for years. I have all the documents, David. Every fraudulent contract your father signed, every backdoor deal he made with the investors, every lie he told my family while he was selling us out. She spread the papers across the table like playing cards. I've spent the last 15 years building a case against Thompson and Associates. Margaret Thompson finally spoke, her voice shaking with fear. Catherine, whatever you want, whatever it takes to make this right, we'll do it. Please don't destroy our family. But Catherine's expression remained cold, unmoved by the woman's tears. Your family destroyed mine first, Margaret. My father died believing he was a failure, never knowing that he had been betrayed by the man he trusted most. Catherine's voice broke slightly on the word, father, and Marcus felt something twist painfully in his chest. Do you know what it's like to watch your parent die from a broken heart? Marcus stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. You used me. You knew exactly who I was when I approached you tonight. This whole thing was planned. The realization hit him like a physical blow. How long have you been watching our family? How long have you been waiting for this moment? Catherine turned to him with eyes that held 15 years of pain and planning. I've been waiting for the perfect opportunity to get close to your family without suspicion. When you approached me tonight with your desperate little proposition, it was like the universe was finally giving me the chance I needed. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You brought your family's reckoning right to their dinner table, Marcus, and you paid me to do it. The weight of what Marcus had done was crushing him. He had been so desperate to avoid embarrassment that he had unknowingly handed his family's greatest enemy the perfect weapon. So everything tonight was fake? The whole helpless woman act, letting me think I was helping you? Not everything was fake, Catherine said softly, and for a moment Marcus saw something genuine flicker across her face. Your kindness toward a stranger, your willingness to help someone you thought needed it, that was real. And it reminded me that not everyone in your family is responsible for what happened to mine. Amanda suddenly stood up, pulling her engagement ring off her finger. David, I can't do this. I can't marry into a family built on lies and corruption. She placed the ring on the table with a decisive click. Find me when you've figured out who you really are." She walked out of the private dining room, leaving David staring after her in shock. "Amanda, wait," David called, but she was already gone. He turned on his father with fury Marcus had never seen before. "Look what you've done. Look what your greed has cost us. I'm losing the woman I love because of decisions you made 15 years ago." Robert Thompson aged 10 years in 10 seconds. "Son, please understand. Business was different then. We did what we had to do to survive. Everyone was making deals like that." But his excuses sounded hollow even to his own ears. Catherine gathered her documents calmly. "I'm filing the lawsuit tomorrow morning. Thompson and Associates will be finished within 6 months. Every client will know exactly how you built your success." She looked directly at Marcus. "I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of this. You seem like a decent person who just happens to have the wrong last name." Before I reveal what Marcus decided to do next, tell me in the comments, do you think Catherine was right to seek revenge after all these years? Or should she have tried to move on? What would you do in her situation? Marcus felt like he was standing at a crossroads that would define the rest of his life. He could stay loyal to his family and try to help them fight Catherine's lawsuit, or he could do what he knew was right and help her get the justice she deserved. "Catherine, wait," he said as she headed toward the door. "Before you leave, I need to know something. Was any of tonight real? The way you looked at me, the way you smiled? Was it all just part of your plan?" Catherine stopped in the doorway, her back still to him. For a long moment she didn't speak, and Marcus could hear his heart pounding in the silence. When she finally turned around, her eyes were glistening with unshed tears. "The plan was to expose your family's crimes and destroy your father's business, but falling for the kindness of the son who had nothing to do with any of it? That wasn't part of the plan at all." The confession hit Marcus like lightning. She had feelings for him, real feelings that had developed despite her 15-year quest for revenge. "So where does that leave us?" he asked, stepping closer to her. "Your lawsuit is going to destroy my family. My father might go to jail. My brother just lost the woman he loves. How do we navigate that?" "I don't know," Catherine whispered honestly. "I've spent half my life planning this moment, and I never considered what I would do if I actually cared about one of you." She looked around the room at his devastated family. Maybe some things are more important than revenge. Marcus's mother was crying quietly now, while his father sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the full consequences of his past actions. David was staring at Amanda's abandoned engagement ring like it held the answers to all his problems. The family that Marcus had been so desperate to impress just hours ago was falling apart before his eyes. "What if there was another way?" Marcus asked suddenly. "What if instead of destroying everything, we found a way to make things right, to give your family the justice they deserved without destroying innocent people in the process?" He reached for Catherine's hand, and to his surprise, she didn't pull away. "Would you consider giving us a chance to do better?" Catherine stared at their joined hands for a long moment, and Marcus could see the internal war playing out on her face. 15 years of anger and pain were battling against something new. Hope that maybe there was a different ending to this story than the one she had planned. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked quietly. "Your father's law firm stole everything from my family. Money, dignity, my father's life. How do you make something like that right without consequences?" Robert Thompson finally spoke, his voice heavy with shame. "Catherine, I know I can never undo what I did to your family. But if you're willing to listen, I'll do whatever it takes to make amends. I'll liquidate assets, I'll testify against the investors who pressured me. I'll sign over part of the law firm to you. Whatever you need." "It's not about the money, Robert," Catherine said, but Marcus heard the slight softening in her tone. "It's about acknowledgement. It's about my father's name being cleared. It's about people knowing that Mitchell Construction was destroyed by fraud, not failure." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "What if we made that happen? What if my father publicly admitted what he did, cleared your family's name, and helped you rebuild what was taken? Would that be enough justice for you?" Catherine looked around the room at each member of his family. Margaret was nodding eagerly, desperate for any solution that might save them. David was watching hopefully, probably thinking about Amanda and whether this might give him a chance to win her back. Robert looked like a man ready to face the consequences of his actions. "There would have to be real consequences," Catherine said finally. "Your father can't just apologize and go back to business as usual. The firm would need to change, to become something that actually helps people instead of exploiting them." Marcus felt a spark of possibility. What if you helped run it? What if Thompson and Associates became Thompson and Mitchell, and we turned it into the kind of law firm that protects families like yours instead of destroying them? The idea was crazy, but as he said it, Marcus realized it might be the perfect solution. The suggestion hung in the air like a bridge between two impossible worlds. Catherine's eyes widened as she processed what Marcus was proposing. Not just forgiveness, but partnership with the family that had destroyed hers. You want me to work with your father? To rebuild the law firm that ruined my life? I want us to rebuild it together, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger with conviction. Think about it. Who better to make sure this never happens to another family than someone who lived through it? You could help create something that actually protects people instead of preying on them. David suddenly straightened up, his business mind catching on to the idea. She's right about the firm needing to change anyway. Our reputation is going to be destroyed when this comes out. But if we're proactive, if we bring Catherine in as a partner and publicly acknowledge what happened, he looked at his father. Dad, it might be our only chance to save anything. Robert Thompson looked older than his 65 years, but Marcus saw something that might have been relief in his eyes. Catherine, I destroyed your family because I was weak and greedy. I let myself be pressured into betraying people who trusted me. If you're willing to help me spend the rest of my career making up for that mistake, I'll sign over 51% of the firm to you today. 51%? Margaret gasped. Robert, that's everything we've built. Everything we built was stolen, Margaret. Her husband replied quietly. It's time to give it back. He looked at Catherine with genuine remorse. Your father was twice the man I ever was. If you're anything like him, the firm will be in better hands than it's ever been. Catherine was quiet for so long that Marcus started to worry she was going to walk away from the offer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. My father always said that the best revenge was massive success. Maybe it's time to stop planning revenge and start planning success instead. Marcus felt his heart leap with hope, but he needed to know one more thing. And us? Where does this leave us? He asked. Because I know this started as a fake relationship for $50, but somewhere in the last 3 hours it became real for me. Catherine turned to face Marcus fully, and he saw something in her expression that made his breath catch. You know what the strangest part of tonight has been? She said softly. For 15 years, I've hated everyone with the last name Thompson. I've planned and schemed and dreamed of the day I could make your family pay for what they did to mine. She stepped closer to him, and Marcus felt like the entire room was holding its breath. But then this awkward, sweet man approached me on the street, desperate enough to hire a homeless woman to pretend to be his girlfriend, and he was so genuinely kind that it broke through 15 years of armor I had built around my heart. Marcus felt tears threatening in his eyes. So what happens now? Do we try to build something real out of something that started as complete fiction? I think, Catherine said, reaching up to touch his face gently, that the best relationships start with two people helping each other become better versions of themselves. You helped me see that not everyone in your family was my enemy, and maybe I can help you see that you don't need to pretend to be someone else to be worthy of love. David was watching them with something like wonder. Amanda always said that real love changes people, makes them braver, better. He picked up the engagement ring she had left behind. Maybe it's time I stopped trying to live up to Dad's legacy and started building my own. Margaret was crying openly now, but they were tears of relief rather than fear. Catherine, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you consider letting me try to be the mother figure you lost when this all happened? I can never replace her, but maybe I can honor her memory by trying to do better. The transformation in the room was incredible. What had started as Marcus's desperate attempt to avoid family embarrassment had become something that might actually heal two families that had been broken by greed and revenge. But Marcus needed to know if Catherine was really ready to let go of 15 years of anger. Are you sure about this? He asked her quietly. Once you forgive us, once you become part of this family, there's no going back to the person who spent 15 years planning revenge. Are you ready to let that version of yourself go? Catherine was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see her mentally saying goodbye to the woman she had been for the past 15 years. You know what's funny? She finally said. I've been so focused on making your family pay that I forgot about making my own family proud. My father would have wanted me to build something beautiful, not tear something down. She turned to Robert Thompson with a look that was firm, but no longer filled with hatred. I'll accept your offer, but with conditions. First, We establish a foundation in my father's name that helps small family businesses protect themselves from predatory practices. Second, the firm commits to pro bono work for families who can't afford legal protection. And third, you personally write letters of apology to every family that was hurt by the fraudulent contracts you signed. Robert nodded immediately. All of that and more. Catherine, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure your father's death meant something. His voice broke slightly. I'll make sure his legacy is about building up families, not tearing them down. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. So where does this leave us personally? He asked Catherine. Because I have to admit I'm terrified that once the adrenaline wears off, you'll realize that you could do so much better than a junior accountant who was desperate enough to hire a fake girlfriend. Catherine laughed, and it was the first genuinely joyful sound she had made all evening. Marcus Thompson, you approached a complete stranger and offered to pay her $50 to help you avoid awkward family questions. That tells me you're either completely insane or incredibly brave. Either way, I think I'm interested in finding out which one it is. David suddenly stood up with renewed purpose. I need to find Amanda. I need to tell her that we're going to be part of something that builds people up instead of tearing them down. Maybe that's enough to give us a real chance. He headed toward the door, then turned back. Catherine, welcome to the family. Dad, it's time to do the right thing. Marcus, don't let her get away. As David left to chase after his fiancée, Marcus realized that his desperate $50 gamble had not only given him a girlfriend, it had given his entire family a chance at redemption. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the lobby of Thompson & Mitchell law firm, watching Catherine command a staff meeting with the kind of natural authority that made everyone in the room hang on her every word. The transformation in both her and the firm had been incredible to witness. Gone was any trace of the broken woman he had met on that bench. Catherine had rebuilt herself into someone who radiated confidence and purpose, but she had kept the kindness that had drawn him to her, even when she was at her lowest point. The firm now specialized in protecting small businesses and families from the kind of predatory practices that had destroyed her father's company. The Mitchell Foundation has helped over 200 families in the past 6 months, Catherine was telling the staff. But more importantly, we've prevented dozens of situations like what happened to my family 15 years ago. She looked directly at Robert, who was sitting in the back row looking proud and ashamed in equal measure. Justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about making sure the same mistakes never happen again. Amanda had come back to David after seeing the changes he was making in himself and his family. They were planning a much smaller, more meaningful wedding focused on service rather than status. Margaret had thrown herself into volunteer work, trying to make up for years of looking the other way, while her husband built their fortune on other people's suffering. But it was the change in Marcus himself that surprised him most. Working alongside Catherine as they rebuilt the firm had given him a sense of purpose he had never experienced in his accounting job. He was discovering that he had a talent for connecting with people, for helping them understand legal complexities in ways that made them feel empowered rather than intimidated. There's something I need to tell you, Catherine said as they walked to their car after the meeting. The night we met, when you offered me $50 to pretend to be your girlfriend, I had been sitting on that bench for 3 days, watching your family's routine, waiting for the perfect opportunity to approach you. Marcus stopped walking. You mean you had been planning to meet me all along? The revelation should have bothered him, but somehow it didn't. They had both been playing roles that night, but the connection they had discovered was real. The plan was to seduce you, get close to your family, and destroy them from the inside, Catherine admitted. But you were so genuinely sweet, so worried about disappointing people you loved, that I couldn't go through with it. Marcus took her hands in his, marveling at how much stronger and steadier they both were than they had been 6 months ago. So you're telling me that my awkward desperation actually saved my family from a much worse fate? He laughed, shaking his head. I guess there's something to be said for being pathetically honest about your problems. There's something to be said for being brave enough to ask for help when you need it. Catherine corrected him. Even if you didn't know what kind of help you were actually asking for. She smiled, that radiant smile that still made his heart skip beats. You know what I love most about you, Marcus? You saw someone who needed help and your first instinct was to try to help them, even when you thought it might benefit you too. They had reached their car, but neither of them made a move to get in. The Chicago evening was perfect and Marcus felt like he was living in a completely different world than the one he had inhabited 6 months ago. I have something I need to tell you too, he said, his voice suddenly nervous. Catherine raised an eyebrow. Please don't tell me you've been planning revenge against me this whole time, because that would be a plot twist I'm not prepared for. Marcus laughed, reaching into his jacket pocket. Actually, I've been planning something else entirely. He pulled out a small velvet box and Catherine's eyes went wide. I know this is crazy. I know we met under the strangest circumstances possible, and I know our relationship has been anything but traditional. But Catherine Mitchell, you have made me braver, kinder, and more purposeful than I ever thought I could be. He dropped to one knee right there on the sidewalk outside their building, not caring who might be watching. I love that you're strong enough to forgive people who hurt you, wise enough to turn revenge into justice, and generous enough to give a guy like me a chance to prove that he's worthy of someone like you. Catherine was crying now, but they were tears of joy. Marcus Thompson, are you seriously proposing to me on the same street where you first hired me to be your fake girlfriend? I'm proposing to you on the street where I accidentally hired the love of my life to pretend to be something she was already becoming, Marcus said, opening the ring box. Will you marry me? For real this time, not for $50 and a free dinner? Catherine stared at the ring for a moment that felt like an eternity to Marcus, and he started to wonder if he had moved too fast, if she wasn't ready for this step. But when she looked up at him, her eyes were shining with a happiness he had never seen before. You know what's incredible about this moment? She said softly. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I would be accepting a marriage proposal from a Thompson, I would have thought they were insane. But you've shown me that love really can transform everything. People, families, even the deepest wounds. She held out her hand and Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. Yes, Marcus Thompson, I will marry you. I will spend the rest of my life building something beautiful with you instead of tearing things down out of anger. The small crowd that had gathered to watch the proposal burst into applause, and Marcus stood up to kiss his fiancée with more happiness than he had ever thought possible. I love you, he whispered against her lips. Even if you did manipulate me into hiring you, I love you too, Catherine whispered back. Even if you are the worst at vetting potential fake girlfriends. They both started laughing, remembering how absurd their first meeting had been and how perfectly it had worked out despite all the deception and hidden agendas. As they finally got into their car to drive home, Catherine turned to him with a mischievous smile. There's just one more thing I should probably tell you before we get married. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat, wondering what other secrets she might be harboring. That night we met, I actually had $300 in my backpack. I wasn't really homeless. I had been staying in hotels while I researched your family. Marcus burst out laughing. So you let me pay you $50 to be my girlfriend when you already had more money than I did? I let you think you were helping someone who needed it, because I could see how important that was to you, Catherine said seriously. Your kindness was real, even if my circumstances weren't, and that kindness is what changed everything. 1 year later, Marcus stood at the altar of a small church in downtown Chicago, watching the most beautiful woman in the world walk down the aisle toward him. But it wasn't Catherine's physical beauty that took his breath away. It was the light in her eyes, the confidence in her step, the joy radiating from every part of her being. The wedding was small and intimate, focused on the people who mattered most rather than the kind of elaborate display the old Thompson family would have demanded. David served as best man, having learned to value authenticity over appearances. Amanda was matron of honor, glowing with her own happiness and the knowledge that she had married into a family committed to doing right by people. Robert Thompson walked Catherine down the aisle, a gesture that symbolized not just the joining of two people but the healing of two families. Margaret sat in the front row crying happy tears, having found in Catherine the daughter she had always wanted and the moral compass their family had desperately needed. As Catherine reached the altar and took Marcus's hands, she whispered something that only he could hear. Thank you for being brave enough to approach a stranger who needed help, even when you thought you were the one who needed saving. The minister began the ceremony, but Marcus was thinking about the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. A $50 act of desperation had turned into the greatest love story of his life, proving that sometimes the best things happen when you're brave enough to ask for help from exactly the right stranger. Do you, Marcus Thompson, take Catherine Mitchell to be your wife, to love and cherish her, to build her up and stand beside her through whatever challenges life brings? The minister asked. I absolutely do, Marcus said, his voice strong and clear. She's already made me a better man than I ever thought I could be. And do you, Catherine Mitchell, take Marcus Thompson to be your husband? To love and support him? To build a life of purpose and meaning together? Catherine's voice rang out like a bell. I do. He taught me that the best revenge is a life well lived and love freely given. As they exchanged rings and promised to spend their lives building each other up, Marcus marveled at how perfectly everything had worked out. His desperate attempt to avoid family embarrassment had led to the most meaningful relationship of his life and the complete transformation of his family's legacy. So there you have it, the incredible story of how Marcus Thompson spent $50 to hire a fake girlfriend and ended up finding real love, true purpose, and a chance to redeem his family's darkest secrets. What started as a desperate attempt to avoid awkward questions at a family dinner became a journey of forgiveness, transformation, and the kind of love that changes everything. Catherine never got the revenge she had planned for 15 years, but she got something infinitely better, a partner who saw her worth even when she was at her lowest point, and a chance to honor her father's memory by protecting other families from the kind of betrayal that had destroyed hers. Marcus never got the perfect fake girlfriend he thought he needed, but he found a real woman who made him brave enough to be authentically himself. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most desperate moments, when we're brave enough to ask for help from a complete stranger, and open enough to let that stranger change our entire world. Marcus and Catherine's story proves that love really can transform anything, even 15 years of carefully planned revenge, into something beautiful and life-giving. What did you think of this incredible story? Have you ever had a moment where desperation led you to something amazing? Tell me in the comments about a time when asking for help changed your life in ways you never expected. And if you're still watching, make sure to hit that like button, because this story shows us that sometimes the most desperate moments lead to the most incredible transformations. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that taking a chance on kindness, even when it seems crazy, can change everything. Marcus and Catherine's journey reminds us that real love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone who makes you want to become the best version of yourself. It's about having the courage to be vulnerable with a stranger and the wisdom to turn pain into purpose. Before you go, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had a moment where you took a chance on helping someone, only to discover they ended up helping you even more? Or maybe you've been in a situation where you had to choose between revenge and forgiveness. Tell me what you decided and how it worked out. And here's something to think about as you go about your week. What would happen if we all approached strangers with the same genuine kindness that Marcus showed Catherine that night? What if we looked past people's circumstances and saw their potential instead? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, because I've got more incredible real-life stories coming that will restore your faith in humanity and show you that love really can conquer anything, even 15 years of carefully planned revenge. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the best investment you can make is $10 and the courage to help a stranger. You never know how it might change both of your lives forever.